The morning sun cast long shadows across the military base as Sergeant Elena Rodriguez carefully cleaned her Barrett M107 sniper rifle. Her hands moved with practiced precision, running the cloth along the barrel's length. She had been doing this routine for 3 years now, but today felt different somehow. Captain Marcus Kane walked through the equipment tent, conducting his usual inspection. He was known for his sharp eyes and attention to detail. Nothing escaped his notice, which made him both respected and feared among the soldiers. As he approached Elena's station, something caught his eye. Tucked discreetly in her gear kit was a small patch. Most people would have missed it, but Kane's military training had taught him to spot even the smallest details. The patch was black with silver thread, showing a skull with crosshairs through it. Below the skull were the words "Ghost Shot Division" in tiny lettering. Elena noticed the captain's pause and looked up from her rifle. Their eyes met for a brief moment. She could see the recognition in his face. Her heart began to race, but she kept her expression neutral. Years of training had taught her to never show emotion, especially fear. "Interesting patch, Rodriguez," Kane said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. The other soldiers in the tent continued their work, unaware of the tension building between their sergeant and captain. Elena set down her cleaning cloth and straightened up. "Sir, I'm not sure what you're referring to." Her voice was steady, but inside she felt like her world was crumbling. The Ghost Shot Division was supposed to be a secret that died with her previous assignment. Kane stepped closer, pretending to examine her rifle. To anyone watching, it looked like a routine inspection. "That's a very specific insignia for someone who doesn't know what I'm referring to," he said, his voice still low. The Ghost Shot Division was disbanded 2 years ago. Officially, it never existed. The weight of those words hung in the air between them. Elena remembered every mission, every impossible shot, every target that seemed untouchable until her unit made them disappear. They were called ghosts because no one ever saw them coming, and no one ever found evidence they were there. "Permission to speak freely, sir?" Elena asked, knowing she was walking into dangerous territory. Kane nodded slightly. Some things are hard to let go of, even when they're supposed to be forgotten. Kane understood more than she knew. He had heard whispers about the Ghost Shot Division during his time in intelligence. They were legends among certain military circles. Elite snipers who could make shots that seemed impossible. They operated in complete secrecy, taking out high-value targets that conventional forces couldn't touch. "How many confirmed kills?" Kane asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Elena hesitated. These numbers weren't something she talked about. They were buried in classified files that officially didn't exist. 47, she said finally. The number felt heavy coming out of her mouth. Each one represented a mission, a life taken, a decision that changed everything for someone somewhere in the world. Kane felt a chill run down his spine. 47 confirmed kills was an extraordinary number for any sniper, but for someone as young as Rodriguez, it suggested a level of skill and experience that was almost frightening. "And unofficially?" he pressed. Elena's jaw tightened. The unofficial numbers were the ones that kept her awake at night sometimes. The ones that happened in places where no records were kept, where governments could deny any involvement. "We don't talk about unofficial numbers, sir." Elena's response was automatic, drilled into her during countless briefings about operational security and plausible deniability. Kane looked around the tent, making sure no one was listening to their conversation. The other soldiers were busy with their own equipment, lost in their morning routines. Why keep the patch? Why risk exposure? Elena picked up her rifle again, running her fingers along its familiar weight. "Because forgetting who you were means forgetting who you are," she said. "That patch represents the best soldiers I ever served with. They deserved better than just disappearing from history." The captain understood that feeling. Military service created bonds that civilian life could never replicate. When units disbanded or missions ended, soldiers often struggled with losing that sense of belonging and purpose. "What happened to the rest of your unit?" Kane asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Elite units like the Ghost Shot Division rarely had happy endings. They operated in the shadows where things went wrong quickly and permanently. Elena's expression darkened. Some retired quietly. Others found different ways to serve. A few, she paused, the words catching in her throat. A few didn't make it home from the last mission. Kane felt the weight of command responsibility settling on his shoulders. He had soldiers under his care now, and the thought of losing any of them was something that haunted every officer worth their rank. The mission that ended everything, Elena continued, her voice barely audible. We were sent after a target in Eastern Europe. Intelligence said it would be routine, but nothing about that mission was routine. She stopped cleaning her rifle and stared out through the tent opening at the mountains in the distance. Kane could see that she was reliving something painful, something that had changed her fundamentally. We completed the mission, she said finally, but the cost was higher than anyone expected. Command decided that Ghost Shot Division had become too much of a liability. Too many questions, too much attention. Kane realized he was getting a glimpse into a world that most military personnel never saw, the world of black operations, where success was measured not in territory gained or enemies defeated, but in problems that simply stopped existing. So they scattered us, Elena continued. New assignments, new identities, new lives. We were told to forget everything, to blend in with regular forces, but you can't just forget who you were. Kane looked at the patch again, understanding now why she kept it. It wasn't just about remembering her past service. It was about honoring the soldiers who didn't get to start over, who paid the ultimate price for missions that officially never happened. The morning inspection continued around them, but something fundamental had changed between the captain and his sergeant. Kane now knew he had one of the most skilled snipers in the world under his command. The question was what to do with that knowledge. 3 days passed since Captain Kane discovered Elena's secret. He found himself watching her during training exercises, noticing things he had missed before. Her movements were more precise than other soldiers. When she handled weapons, there was a fluidity that spoke of countless hours of specialized training. Her shooting scores were good but not exceptional. Kane realized she was deliberately holding back. On Thursday morning, Kane received an encrypted message that changed everything. He read it twice, making sure he understood correctly. The message came from Colonel Sarah Mitchell, someone he hadn't heard from in over a year. Mitchell worked in a division of military intelligence that operated in the gray areas between official policy and necessary action. Need to discuss a time-sensitive matter. Your base, tonight, come alone. The message was signed with a code name Kane recognized from his intelligence days. This wasn't a social call. Kane spent the day trying to focus on his regular duties, but his mind kept returning to the message. When evening came, he made his way to the agreed meeting point, an abandoned equipment storage building on the edge of the base. Colonel Mitchell was already waiting. She looked older than Kane remembered, with new lines around her eyes that spoke of stress and sleepless nights. Military intelligence work aged people quickly, especially at her level where decisions had global consequences. Captain Kane, she said, stepping out of the shadows. Thank you for meeting me. We have a situation that requires your specific resources. Kane felt a cold knot forming in his stomach. What kind of situation, Colonel? Mitchell pulled out a tablet and showed him a satellite image. It showed a compound in a mountainous region Kane didn't recognize. This facility is producing chemical weapons for a terrorist organization. Our intelligence indicates they plan to use these weapons in a major population center within the next 2 weeks. Kane studied the image. The compound was heavily fortified, surrounded by natural barriers that would make a conventional assault extremely difficult. Why not use airstrikes? The facility is built into the mountain. Our bombs can't penetrate deep enough to destroy the production equipment. We need precision, not explosives. Mitchell swiped to the next image, showing detailed layouts of the compound. There's one target that matters, she continued. The facility's chief chemist. Without him, they can't complete the weapons production. He's heavily protected, rarely leaves the compound, and when he does, he's surrounded by security. Kane was beginning to understand where this conversation was heading. You need a sniper. We need the best sniper, Mitchell corrected. Someone who can make an impossible shot in impossible conditions. Someone who's done this kind of work before. Kane thought about Elena, cleaning her rifle with the care of someone who understood the weight of precision. Why come to me? Surely you have other resources. Mitchell's expression grew serious. Most of our best assets are compromised or dead. The Ghost Shot Division was disbanded, but we know at least one member was reassigned to regular forces. Intelligence suggests she's on your base. The words hung in the air between them. Kane realized this wasn't a coincidence. His assignment to this base, Elena's placement in his unit, it had all been carefully orchestrated. "You've been watching her. We've been protecting her," Mitchell corrected. After the Ghost Shot Division was disbanded, several foreign intelligence services tried to recruit or eliminate former members. Placing her in a regular unit was the safest option. Kane felt manipulated, but he also understood the logic. Elena's skills were too valuable to lose, but too dangerous to use openly. "What makes you think she'll agree to this?" Mitchell showed him another image on the tablet. It was a photograph of a crowded marketplace, filled with families shopping and children playing. "This is the likely target for the chemical weapons. Approximately 50,000 people visit this market every day." Kane stared at the image, seeing the innocent faces that would become casualties if the mission failed. Military service was ultimately about protecting people like this, people who would never know their lives hung in the balance of decisions made in rooms they'd never see. "The shot is over 2 kilometers, Mitchell continued, "through mountain winds that change direction every few minutes. The target will only be exposed for approximately 15 seconds during his daily routine. Most snipers would consider it impossible." Kane knew Elena's capabilities now. 47 confirmed kills suggested she had made difficult shots before, but this sounded like something beyond even elite military standards. "What's the timeline?" Kane asked, though he already suspected the answer would be tight. "The target moves to a new location in 5 days. This is our only window. After that, we lose him for months, possibly years." Mitchell closed the tablet and looked directly at Kane. "I need your answer tonight." Kane thought about Elena, about the pain he had seen in her eyes when she talked about her lost unit members. She had been trying to live a normal military life, to put the shadows behind her. This would pull her back into a world she was trying to escape. "She has the right to refuse," Kane said. Mitchell nodded, but they both knew the weight of 50,000 lives would make refusal nearly impossible for someone like Elena. "There's one more thing," Mitchell added. "If she agrees, this mission stays completely off the books. No official records, no medals, no recognition. Just like the old days." Kane understood. Success would mean saving lives that would never know they had been in danger. Failure would mean Elena would likely die in enemy territory with no government acknowledgement of her sacrifice. "How soon do you need to know?"
Kane asked.
Mitchell checked her watch. "I leave at 600. The mission launches immediately if she agrees." She handed Kane a secure phone. "This will connect you directly to mission support. Once you make the call, there's no turning back." Mitchell prepared to leave, then paused. "Captain, Elena Rodriguez is one of the finest soldiers I've ever worked with. She saved countless lives during her time with Ghost Shot Division, but this mission could be her last. Make sure she understands what she's choosing." After Mitchell left, Kane stood alone in the storage building, holding the secure phone. He thought about Elena's patch, about her 47 confirmed kills, about the marketplace full of innocent people. Military command meant making decisions that affected other people's lives. Tonight, he had to decide how to approach one of his soldiers about returning to a world she had tried to leave behind. The weight of command had never felt heavier than it did in that moment, standing in the darkness with the power to change Elena's life forever. Kane found Elena in the shooting range at 500, an hour before morning formation. She was alone, methodically working through precision drills with her Barrett M107. Each shot was perfectly placed, but Kane noticed she was still holding back, not showing her true capabilities even in private practice. "Rodriguez," he called out as she finished a string of shots. She lowered her rifle and turned toward him, immediately noticing the serious expression on his face. "Sir, you're up early." Elena's voice carried a note of caution. Something about Kane's posture told her this wasn't a casual encounter. Kane approached slowly, his boots echoing in the empty range. "We need to talk privately." He gestured toward a small office adjacent to the range. Elena secured her weapon and followed him, her mind racing through possibilities. Inside the office, Kane closed the door and activated a white noise generator, standard procedure for classified conversations. Elena recognized the setup immediately. Her pulse quickened as memories of similar briefings flooded back. 3 days ago, you told me about Ghost Shot Division," Kane began. "About missions that officially never happened and soldiers who paid the ultimate price." Elena nodded, wondering where this was leading. Kane pulled out the secure phone Mitchell had given him. "Last night I received a visit from Colonel Sarah Mitchell, military intelligence. She has a situation that requires your specific skill set. Elena felt the familiar weight of impending deployment settling on her shoulders. She had hoped those days were behind her, that she could serve out her remaining time in quiet anonymity. What kind of situation? Kane activated the phone and showed her the images Mitchell had shared. Elena studied the compound, immediately analyzing sightlines, wind patterns, and potential shooting positions with the trained eye of a professional sniper. Chemical weapons facility, Kane explained. They're planning an attack on a civilian target within 2 weeks. Conventional assault isn't possible due to the terrain. Airstrikes can't penetrate deep enough to destroy the production capability. Elena continued examining the images, her tactical mind automatically processing the information. She could see why they needed a precision shooter. The facility was built like a fortress, with only specific vulnerable points that would require exact placement of rounds. The target is the chief chemist, Kane continued. Without him, they can't complete the weapons. But he's heavily protected and rarely exposed. When he is, it's only for seconds at a time. Elena looked up from the phone. How long is the shot? She asked the question with the calm professionalism that had made her legendary in elite military circles. Just over 2 kilometers. Mountain winds. Minimal exposure window. Kane watched her face for any reaction. Helena's expression remained neutral, but he could see her mind working through the variables. That's a difficult shot, she said finally. Not impossible, but difficult. Weather conditions would be critical. Equipment would need to be perfect. Intelligence would need to be absolutely accurate. Kane felt relief that she wasn't immediately dismissing the mission as impossible. Colonel Mitchell believes you're the only asset available who can make this work. Elena sat down heavily in one of the office chairs. For a moment, the professional mask slipped and Kane could see the weight of her past missions in her eyes. I tried to leave this behind, Captain. I wanted to be just another soldier. I know, Kane said softly, but sometimes the world doesn't let us choose who we are. Sometimes circumstances choose for us. Elena thought about her former team members, the ones who didn't make it home from their last mission. She remembered the promises they had made to each other about protecting innocent people, about using their skills to make the world safer. What's the civilian target? She asked, though part of her already knew the answer would make refusal nearly impossible. Kane showed her the marketplace image. Elena stared at the families, the children, the everyday people going about their lives without knowing they were in danger. She had seen similar images before other missions, but they never got easier to process. 50,000 people use that market daily, Kane said. The chemical weapons are designed for maximum casualties in crowded spaces. Elena closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She could walk away. She could refuse the mission and continue her quiet life as a regular soldier. But 50,000 innocent people would pay the price for her choice. What's the support structure? She asked, her voice taking on the professional tone Kane was beginning to recognize from her Ghost Shot Division days. Full intelligence support, real-time weather data, extraction team standing by. But Elena, Kane paused, making sure she was listening. This is completely off the books. No official records, no acknowledgement. If something goes wrong, you're on your own. Elena laughed bitterly. That sounds familiar. Ghost Shot Division operated the same way. We were heroes when missions succeeded and liabilities when they didn't. Kane understood her hesitation. Military service required soldiers to trust that their sacrifices would be remembered and honored. Black operations offered no such assurance. There's one more thing, Kane continued. If you take this mission, there's no guarantee you'll make it back. The extraction will be difficult, and enemy response will be immediate once the shot is taken. Elena stood up and walked to the small window overlooking the shooting range. Other soldiers were beginning to arrive for morning training, unaware that their sergeant was contemplating a return to the most dangerous kind of military service. How long do I have to decide? She asked without turning around. Colonel Mitchell leaves it at 600. If you agree, the mission launches immediately. Kane checked his watch. That's 45 minutes. Elena turned back to face him. 45 minutes to decide whether to risk everything for people I'll never meet, on a mission that officially won't exist, with no guarantee of survival or recognition. Kane nodded. That's an accurate summary. Elena was quiet for several minutes, staring at the images of the marketplace. Kane could see her internal struggle playing out across her face. Finally, she spoke. My Ghost Shot Division patch, she said. You asked why I kept it. I told you it was about remembering who I was. But that's not the whole truth. Kane waited for her to continue. Elena's voice became softer, more vulnerable than he had heard before. I kept it because those soldiers died believing they were making the world safer. Every difficult shot, every impossible mission. We told ourselves it was worth it because we were protecting people like those families in the marketplace. She picked up the secure phone and looked at the images one more time. If I don't take this mission and those people die, then my team members died for nothing. Their sacrifices become meaningless. Kane realized she had already made her decision. The mathematics of military service were simple for someone like Elena. Potential casualties weighed against mission requirements. Personal safety was never part of the equation. 47 confirmed kills, she said quietly. If I take this mission, it might be 48. Or it might be the mission that finally catches up with me. Elena looked directly at Kane. Call Colonel Mitchell. Tell her Ghost Shot Division has one more mission to complete. Within 2 hours of Elena's decision, the base transformed into a hub of covert activity. Colonel Mitchell returned with a small team of specialists who moved with the quiet efficiency of people accustomed to working in shadows. Elena watched them set up equipment in a secure hangar, recognizing the familiar rhythm of mission preparation. Rodriguez, Mitchell called out as Elena approached the operations center they had established. Glad you decided to join us. Let's get you briefed on the latest intelligence. The hangar had been divided into different sections. One area contained detailed maps and satellite imagery. Another held specialized equipment that Elena hadn't seen since her Ghost Shot Division days. A third section buzzed with communication equipment connecting them to intelligence assets around the world. Mitchell led Elena to a large table, covered with photographs and technical specifications. The target maintains a very predictable routine. Every morning at exactly 0847 local time, he steps onto a balcony on the facility's third level to make a phone call. The call lasts between 12 and 18 seconds. Elena studied the photographs, noting the balcony's position relative to potential shooting locations. What's the visibility like at that time of day? Good natural light, but mountain shadows create contrast issues, replied Lieutenant Sarah Chen, Mitchell's intelligence specialist. We've been monitoring weather patterns for the past month. Wind conditions are most favorable between 0830 and 0900. Elena examined topographical maps showing the terrain around the facility. The shooting position would be on an adjacent mountain, requiring a climb through difficult terrain and darkness. How close can we get the shooting position? 2100 meters, answered Staff Sergeant Mike Torres, the mission's logistics coordinator. Any closer and you risk detection by their security patrols. The approach will take approximately 4 hours through rough terrain. Elena calculated the variables in her head. 2100 meters was at the extreme range of her Barrett M107, but still manageable under ideal conditions. The problem was that conditions were rarely ideal in the field. Mitchell activated a computer displaying weather forecasting models. Temperature will be -15 Celsius at the shooting position. Wind speed varies between 8 and 14 knots with direction changes every few minutes due to the mountain terrain. Elena frowned as she studied the weather data. Cold temperatures would affect her rifle's performance, and variable winds would make the shot exponentially more difficult. What's the backup plan if weather conditions deteriorate? There is no backup plan, Mitchell said bluntly. The target moves to a new location tomorrow night. This is our only opportunity for the next several months. Elena felt the familiar pressure of single-opportunity missions. Ghost Shot Division had specialized in situations where failure meant waiting months or years for another chance, if one came at all. Chen handed Elena a thick folder containing detailed intelligence reports. The target security team consists of 12 highly trained personnel. They sweep the balcony area before he appears, but they focus on ground-level threats. They're not expecting a shot from this distance. Elena opened the folder and began reading. The target, Dr. Viktor Kozlov, was a former Soviet chemical weapons specialist who had sold his expertise to the highest bidder after the Cold War ended. His work had been linked to several terrorist attacks in the past decade. Personal profile, Elena said as she read. Height, weight, movement patterns. This is thorough work. She appreciated detailed intelligence. The more she knew about her target, the better she could predict his behavior during the critical seconds when she needed to take the shot. Torres led Elena to the equipment section. "We've prepared your standard loadout plus some specialized gear for the mountain environment." He showed her cold weather clothing, climbing equipment, and survival supplies. Elena examined her Barrett M107, which had been fitted with specialized optics and a bipod designed for extreme range shooting. The rifle had been re-zeroed for the specific ammunition they would be using and the expected environmental conditions. "Match-grade ammunition," Torres explained, showing her boxes of specially selected rounds. "Each bullet has been individually weighed and measured. We've prepared 50 rounds, though you should only need one." Elena appreciated the redundancy. In sniper work, equipment failure could mean mission failure, and mission failure could mean death. Having backup equipment and ammunition was standard practice for operations like this. Chen approached with a communication device Elena didn't recognize. "Real-time weather monitoring from the shooting position. We'll have a forward observer in place 6 hours before the shot to provide updated wind readings." Elena tested the communication system, hearing the clear voice of the forward observer, who was already moving into position. Professional military operations relied on precise coordination between multiple specialists, each performing their role perfectly. "Extraction plan," Mitchell said, spreading out additional maps. "Once you take the shot, you'll have approximately 8 minutes before enemy forces reach your position. The extraction team will be waiting at these coordinates." Elena studied the extraction route. It required a dangerous descent through terrain that would be difficult under ideal conditions, and nearly impossible while being pursued by armed enemies. "What if the extraction team can't reach the pickup point?" Elena asked. She had learned from previous missions to always consider what could go wrong. "You have emergency supplies for 72 hours and backup extraction coordinates here and here." Torres pointed to 2 alternative locations on the map. "But Elena, if the primary extraction fails, your chances of getting out alive drop significantly." Elena nodded, understanding the risks. Elite military operations always balanced mission success against personnel safety. Sometimes the mission took priority, even when it meant losing good soldiers. Mitchell gathered the team around the central table. Final timeline. Elena departs at 2200 tonight. She reaches the shooting position at Aero 200. The forward observer provides final weather updates at Aero 800. Shot window opens at Aero 847. Elena checked her watch. That gave her 8 hours to rest, eat, and mentally prepare for what could be her final mission. She had learned long ago that physical preparation was only half the challenge. Mental preparation often determined the difference between success and failure. "Questions?" Mitchell asked, looking around the team. Elena had dozens of questions, but experience had taught her that some answers could only be found in the field. Overplanning could be as dangerous as underplanning in operations like this. "One question," Elena said. "If I don't make it back, what happens to the story? Do people ever learn what we tried to do here?" Mitchell's expression grew somber. "You know the answer to that. This mission never happened. We were never here. You're just another soldier who died in a training accident." Elena accepted this reality. Ghost Shot Division soldiers had always operated in the shadows, protecting people who would never know they had been in danger. The reward was not recognition, but the knowledge that innocent lives had been saved. As the briefing concluded, Elena felt the familiar transformation beginning. The regular soldier who cleaned her rifle each morning was disappearing, replaced by the precision instrument that had earned 47 confirmed kills. Tomorrow morning, she would either become a ghost who saved 50,000 lives or simply another ghost whose story would never be told. Elena began her approach at 2200 hours, moving through the darkness like a shadow given form. She had blackened her face and hands, and her specialized clothing was designed to absorb rather than reflect even the smallest amount of light. Her Barrett M107 was broken down into components and distributed across her gear to maintain balance during the climb. The first 2 hours were the most dangerous. She had to cross open terrain where enemy patrols might spot her even in darkness. Elena moved in short bursts, covering ground quickly before freezing motionless for several minutes to listen for any signs of detection. Her earpiece crackled with the voice of the forward observer. Call sign Hawk, who had reached his position an hour earlier. "Ghost, I have visual on the facility. No unusual activity. Patrol patterns match intelligence reports." Elena keyed her radio once to acknowledge. Communication discipline was critical. Every transmission increased the risk of detection by enemy electronic surveillance equipment. The mountain terrain was more challenging than the maps had indicated. Rocky surfaces that looked stable shifted under her weight, and she had to carefully test each handhold and footstep. A single misplaced step could send rocks cascading down the mountainside, alerting enemy forces to her presence. At Era 100, Elena reached the base of the final approach to her shooting position. The last 1,000 meters would be the most difficult, requiring her to climb nearly vertical rock faces while carrying 40 pounds of equipment. "Ghost, this is Control," Mitchell's voice came through her earpiece. "Weather update. Wind speeds increasing. Gusts up to 18 knots predicted for your shot window." Elena paused in her climb, processing this information. 18-knot winds would make an already difficult shot nearly impossible. She would need to time the shot during a brief lull in the wind, which meant waiting for exactly the right moment. She resumed climbing, her fingers finding holds in the rock that seemed impossible to others but felt natural to someone with her training. Elena had spent countless hours learning to move through terrain that would stop conventional soldiers. At Oro 200, she reached the shooting position, a narrow ledge barely wide enough for her prone shooting stance. Elena quickly assembled her Barrett M107, each component fitting together with mechanical precision born of thousands of repetitions. "Position reached," she whispered into her radio. "Beginning final preparations." Elena arranged her equipment methodically. Bipod deployed and adjusted for the exact angle required. Ammunition laid out in precise order. Rangefinder positioned for quick access. Backup communication device activated. Every detail mattered when you only had one chance. Through her scope, she could see the facility 2,100 meters away. The distance was so great that the building looked like a toy model, but Elena's optics brought the target balcony into sharp focus. She could see the door through which Dr. Kozlov would emerge in less than 7 hours. Control, Ghost. Visual confirmed on target location. Beginning environmental monitoring. Elena began the patient process of observing wind patterns, temperature changes, and light conditions that would affect her shot. Hawk's voice provided regular updates from his closer observation point. Target building showing normal activity. Kitchen staff arrived at 0300 security. Patrol completed sweep at 0315. No changes to established. Patterns. Elena used the waiting hours to fine-tune her equipment and study the target area through her scope. She memorized every detail of the balcony, noting exactly where Kozlov would stand based on photographs of his previous phone calls. At 0600, she began her final preparations. Elena consumed a high-energy meal and hydrated carefully, knowing that her body's condition would affect her shooting stability. She performed stretching exercises to keep her muscles loose during the long hours of remaining motionless. "Ghost, weather update," Control transmitted. Temperature dropping to -18. Wind patterns showing some stabilization. Gusts decreasing to 12 knots maximum. Elena felt a small surge of relief. 12 knots was manageable, especially if she could time the shot during a brief calm period. Temperature drop would actually help by making the air denser, which would improve her bullet's flight characteristics. At 0730, Hawk provided the morning security update. Enemy patrol completed their sweep. Kitchen staff preparing breakfast. All patterns normal. Target should appear in approximately 1 hour and 17 minutes. Elena began her final mental preparation. She controlled her breathing, slowing her heart rate to the optimal level for precision shooting. Her mind became focused on the single task ahead, blocking out all distractions and concerns about extraction or survival. Control. Ghost request permission to load weapon. Elena always asked permission before chambering around. Once her rifle was loaded, there was no turning back from the mission. "Permission granted," Mitchell responded. "All stations report ready. Weather conditions acceptable. Target expected in 73 minutes. Elena slid a match-grade round into the Barrett's chamber and engaged the safety. The weapon was now ready to fire, requiring only the flip of a switch and pressure on the trigger to send a .50 caliber bullet across more than 2 kilometers of mountain air. At 8:40, Hawk's voice carried new tension. Movement in target building. Kitchen staff delivering breakfast to 3rd level. Security team beginning pre-appearance sweep. Elena settled into her final shooting position, checking her scope adjustments one last time. The crosshairs were perfectly aligned with the spot where intelligence indicated Kozlov would stand. She controlled her breathing, finding the natural rhythm that would allow her to fire between heartbeats. Wind speed dropping, Hawk reported. 8 knots, steady from the northwest. This could be your window, Ghost. Elena watched the facility through her scope, every muscle in her body coiled for the moment when her target would appear. 47 confirmed kills had taught her that the moment of firing was just the endpoint of hours of preparation and patience. At 08:45, the balcony door opened. A security guard emerged and swept the area with his eyes, looking for threats from ground level but never thinking to check the mountains over 2 kilometers away. Security sweep complete, Hawk whispered. Target should appear in approximately 90 seconds. Elena disengaged her rifle safety and settled her finger alongside the trigger. Her breathing slowed to the measured rhythm she had perfected through years of training. Everything else in the world disappeared except the small circle of her scope's field of view. At 08:46, the door opened again. Dr. Viktor Kozlov stepped onto the balcony, exactly where intelligence had predicted he would stand. Elena could see him clearly through her scope. A man in his 60s wearing a dark coat, completely unaware that his life was measured in seconds. Target acquired, Elena whispered, her voice barely audible even to herself. Her finger moved to the trigger as she waited for the perfect moment when wind, breathing, and heartbeat would align for an impossible shot. Elena's world narrowed to the circle of her scope. Dr. Viktor Kozlov stood on the balcony, phone pressed to his ear, completely unaware that death was watching him from over 2 kilometers away. Elena controlled her breathing, feeling her heartbeat slow to the rhythm she had perfected through years of training. Wind speed 6 knots, steady, Hawk whispered in her earpiece. Temperature stable. This is optimal conditions, Ghost. Elena made microscopic adjustments to her aim, compensating for the bullet drop over 2,100 meters and the crosswind that would push her round slightly off course. The mathematics of long-range shooting played out in her mind. Velocity, trajectory, environmental factors all calculated in seconds. Kozlov moved slightly, turning to look back toward the door. Elena tracked him smoothly, keeping her crosshairs centered on his chest. Through her scope, she could see him clearly enough to read his facial expressions. He looked tired, stressed about something. She wondered if he knew about the planned chemical weapons attack. Control Ghost, target stable. Conditions optimal. Request permission to engage. Elena's voice was barely a whisper, but every word was clear through the communication system. Permission granted. Mitchell's voice came back immediately. All stations report ready for immediate extraction upon shot confirmation. Elena settled deeper into her shooting position, her body becoming one with the rifle. Years of training had taught her to make the weapon an extension of her will, every component working in perfect harmony for this single moment. The wind dropped to almost nothing. Elena could feel the stillness in the air, the brief calm that mountain snipers learn to recognize and exploit. This was her moment. She began her final breathing cycle. Deep breath in, half breath out, hold. Her finger found the trigger, applying the precise pressure she had practiced thousands of times. The Barrett M107 was ready to send a .50 caliber round across an impossible distance. Kozlov finished his phone call and began to turn back toward the door. In seconds, he would be gone and the opportunity would be lost forever. 50,000 people in the marketplace would remain in danger while the chemical weapons production continued. Elena's heartbeat steadied. Between one heartbeat and the next, in the space of perfect stillness, she applied the final pressure to the trigger. The Barrett M107 roared, the massive .50 caliber round leaving the barrel at over 2,800 feet per second. The rifle's recoil drove back against Elena's shoulder with tremendous force, but she maintained her position, tracking the target through her scope. The bullet traveled for what seemed like an eternity but was actually less than 3 seconds. Elena watched through her optics as the round covered the distance, following the trajectory she had calculated. At 2,100 meters away, Dr. Viktor Kozlov's body jerked backward as the .50 caliber bullet found its mark. He collapsed immediately, his phone clattering across the balcony floor. The chemical weapons expert who had threatened 50,000 innocent lives was dead before he hit the ground. Target down, Elena whispered into her radio. Shot confirmed. Kozlov is neutralized. The response was immediate chaos on the enemy's side. Security guards rushed onto the balcony, shouting orders and looking for threats they couldn't see. Sirens began wailing from inside the facility as they tried to understand what had happened. Ghost, this is Control. Confirmed kill. Excellent work. Begin immediate extraction. Enemy response teams will be mobilizing within minutes. Elena was already moving, breaking down her rifle with practiced speed. Every second counted now. The enemy would quickly realize the shot had come from long range and would begin searching the surrounding mountains. She packed her equipment with methodical precision despite the urgency. Nothing could be left behind that might identify her or compromise future operations. The Barrett's components went back into her pack, ammunition was secured, and all traces of her presence were eliminated. "Hawk, report," Elena called as she began her descent from the shooting position. The climb down would be even more dangerous than the ascent, complicated by the need for speed and the likelihood of pursuit. "Enemy forces deploying from the facility," Hawk responded. 2 vehicles heading toward the mountain base. Estimate 20 minutes before they reach the lower approach routes. Elena moved as quickly as the terrain allowed, using controlled slides down rock faces to gain speed. Her hands were scraped and bleeding within minutes, but she maintained her grip and continued the dangerous descent. At 0855, her radio crackled with Mitchell's voice. "Ghost, additional intelligence. Kozlov's death has triggered immediate evacuation of the facility. They're destroying evidence and abandoning the chemical weapons production. Mission success is complete." Elena felt a surge of relief mixed with professional satisfaction. The shot had accomplished more than just eliminating the target. It had disrupted the entire operation and likely saved the lives of everyone who would have been affected by the chemical weapons. "Extraction team, report position," Elena called as she reached a narrow ledge halfway down the mountain. She could see vehicles in the distance, enemy forces spreading out to begin their search. "Ghost, this is Extract 1. We're positioned at primary pickup coordinates. Enemy forces moving to block lower routes. You'll need to reach us within 15 minutes or we'll have to abort to backup location." Elena pushed herself harder, taking risks with her footing that she would never accept under normal circumstances. Rocks scattered beneath her boots as she half climbed, half fell down the steep mountain face. Behind her, she could hear the distant sound of helicopters. The enemy was bringing in air support to search the mountains. Elena knew that once those helicopters reached her area, her chances of escape would drop dramatically. 10 minutes to extraction. Torres's voice came through her earpiece. "You're cutting it close, Ghost." Elena reached a near-vertical section of rock face and made a decision that went against all her training. Instead of carefully climbing down, she rappelled using her equipment cord, sliding down the cliff face at dangerous speed. The technique worked, but the cord snapped when she was still 20 feet from the bottom. Elena hit the rocky ground hard, her left ankle twisting beneath her. Pain shot up her leg, but she forced herself to keep moving. 5 minutes, Ghost, where are you?" Extract 1 called urgently. Elena limped through the forest toward the pickup coordinates, her ankle throbbing with each step. Behind her, she could hear voices shouting in the distance. The enemy search teams were getting closer. At 09009, she stumbled into a small clearing where 2 men in camouflage waited beside a concealed all-terrain vehicle. Extract 1 and Extract 2 grabbed her equipment and helped her into the vehicle without ceremony. "Go, go, go!" Extract 1 shouted as the vehicle lurched forward, heading away from the facility at maximum speed through terrain that barely qualified as a road. Elena sat in the back seat, finally allowing herself to feel the exhaustion and pain she had been suppressing. Her ankle was probably sprained, her hands were torn from the climb, and her body ached from the impossible shot and desperate escape. But Dr. Viktor Kozlov was dead. The chemical weapons facility was being abandoned, and 50,000 innocent people in a marketplace would continue their lives without ever knowing how close they had come to disaster. "Control, this is Extract 1. Package secured, heading to safe house. Mission complete." The radio transmission was brief and professional, but Elena could hear the relief in the operator's voice. As they drove away from the mountains, Elena thought about her Ghost Shot Division patch carefully hidden in her gear. 48 confirmed kills now. 1 more impossible shot completed. 1 more mission that officially never happened. She closed her eyes and let the vehicle carry her towards safety, knowing that somewhere behind them, enemy forces were still searching for a ghost who had already disappeared into legend. Elena sat in the military hospital bed, staring out the window at the base where her normal life was supposed to resume. 3 days had passed since the mission, and officially she had been injured during a routine training exercise. Her sprained ankle and torn hands were explained as the result of a climbing accident during mountain survival training. Dr. Sarah Kim, the base medical officer, finished examining Elena's ankle. "The swelling is going down nicely. You should be cleared for light duty by next week." She made notes on Elena's chart, unaware that the injuries had been sustained during a mission that saved 50,000 lives. Captain Kane entered the medical bay as Dr. Kim was leaving. He carried Elena's gear bag and a cup of coffee, settling into the visitor's chair with the casual air of an officer checking on an injured soldier. "How are you feeling, Rodriguez?" Kane asked, though his eyes conveyed a deeper question about her mental state after completing such a high-stakes mission. Elena accepted the coffee gratefully. "Better, sir. Ready to get back to normal duties." The word normal carried weight they both understood. After 3 years of trying to leave the shadows behind, Elena had voluntarily returned to the world of black operations. Kane glanced around to ensure they were alone, then spoke quietly. "Colonel Mitchell asked me to deliver a message. The mission results exceeded expectations. The facility has been completely abandoned, and intelligence indicates the terrorist organization has lost its chemical weapons capability entirely." Elena felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Military success was often measured in territory gained or enemies defeated, but the most meaningful victories were the disasters that never happened. 50,000 people would go to the marketplace tomorrow and the next day and the day after that, never knowing their lives had hung in the balance. "There's more," Kane continued. "Kozlov's death created a power vacuum in the organization. 3 of his key associates were arrested by international authorities within 48 hours. The entire network is collapsing." Elena nodded, understanding the ripple effects of precision military action. Sometimes eliminating a single target could unravel an entire threat network. Her one shot had accomplished what months of conventional operations might not have achieved. Kane pulled a small package from Elena's gear bag. Inside was her Ghost Shot Division patch, carefully preserved despite the dangerous extraction. "You might want to put this somewhere safe," he said with a slight smile. Elena took the patch, feeling its familiar weight in her damaged hands. 48 confirmed kills now. But she realized the number mattered less than the lives saved. Each mission had protected innocent people from threats they would never know existed. "Captain," Elena said carefully, "what happens now? Do I go back to being just another soldier? Or will Colonel Mitchell have more missions for Ghost Shot Division?" Kane considered his answer. "Officially, Ghost Shot Division doesn't exist and never did. But the world has a way of creating situations that require impossible solutions. If that happens again, would you be willing?" Elena thought about the marketplace full of families, about her former team members who had died protecting people, about the weight of having skills that could make the difference between mass casualties and safety. "Yes," she said simply, "but I have conditions." Kane raised an eyebrow, curious about what demands a soldier could make regarding classified operations. "No more lies about training accidents," Elena said. "If I die on a mission, I want my family to know I died serving my country, not climbing mountains." They deserve that much truth, Kane understood. Military families made sacrifices alongside their soldiers, and they deserved acknowledgement of those sacrifices, even if the specific details had to remain classified. "I'll discuss that with Colonel Mitchell," Kane promised. "Anything else?" Elena held up her Ghost Shot Division patch. "If there are other former members out there living quiet lives like I was, they should have the choice. If another mission like this comes up, contact them. Let them decide whether to come back." Kane realized Elena was talking about reforming Ghost Shot Division, not as a permanent unit, but as a group of elite soldiers who could be called upon when conventional forces weren't enough. "That's a significant request, Rodriguez. It would require authorization at levels I can't even access." Kane paused, considering the implications. "But given what you just accomplished, I think those conversations might be possible." A nurse entered the room, interrupting their discussion. "Sergeant Rodriguez? You have a visitor. Says he's family." Elena looked confused. Her family lived across the country and had no idea where she was stationed. Kane stood up, immediately alert to potential security concerns. A man in civilian clothes entered the room. Elena recognized him immediately and felt tears forming in her eyes. It was Sergeant First Class David Martinez, her former spotter from Ghost Shot Division and one of the soldiers she thought had died on their last mission. "Hello, Elena," Martinez said with the grin she remembered from a dozen impossible missions. "Heard you were back in business." Kane stepped back, recognizing a reunion between soldiers who had shared experiences beyond his understanding. Elena struggled to sit up in her hospital bed, hardly believing Martinez was alive. "David?" But the report said, "We thought you were killed in the extraction." Elena's voice broke slightly as she spoke. The guilt of leaving team members behind had haunted her for 3 years. Martinez pulled up another chair. "I was captured, not killed. Spent 18 months in various prisons before a prisoner exchange got me out. By then, Ghost Shot Division was disbanded and everyone had scattered." Kane realized he was witnessing something extraordinary, the reunion of elite soldiers who had been told their teammates were dead. "I should leave you two to talk," he said, heading toward the door. "Captain," Elena called after him. "Remember what we discussed about contacting other former members?" Kane nodded and left the room, understanding that Ghost Shot Division was about to have a very different kind of reunion than anyone had planned. Martinez leaned forward in his chair. "Elena, I've been tracking down our old team for 2 years. Most are still alive, still serving in various capacities. When word leaked that you had taken a long-range mission, I knew it was time for a conversation." Elena felt hope building in her chest. "How many are still out there?" "7 that I've confirmed. Johnson is training snipers in Georgia. Williams is working intelligence in Germany. Tor has transferred to special operations in Colorado." Martinez counted on his fingers. All of them have been living quiet lives, but all of them would come back if called. Elena thought about the impossible missions that still existed in the world. The threats that conventional forces couldn't handle. The innocent people who needed protection from dangers they couldn't imagine. "David," she said, looking at her Ghost Shot Division patch, "I think it's time to let the ghosts come back." Outside the medical bay window, the sun was setting over the mountains where Elena had made an impossible shot 3 days earlier. Tomorrow she would begin the process of healing and returning to normal duties. But she now knew that normal was no longer enough. Ghost Shot Division had never truly disbanded. It had simply been scattered, waiting for the right moment to reform. That moment had arrived, and Elena Rodriguez was no longer alone in carrying the weight of impossible missions. The ghosts were gathering, and the world was about to become a safer place for 50,000 families who would never know their names.